Hey there, brand new Village Vice. He's Zach Blackerby. I'm Brad Law, and we are talking about that basketball because, Zach, here's why. When Auburn lost at Tennessee a week ago, everybody just assumed that the SEC championship was out of the mix, that there was no, including, by the way, like Coach Pearl mentioned it in his post-game conversation, was that this was this probably puts an end to Auburn's SEC championship hopes.
Well, and it felt that way a little bit too, because just of the feeling like within that isolated game where it's like Auburn did so much, but there's just nothing they could do to top somebody who's shooting over 50% from three. It's just like, dang it. And then Tennessee had this incredible moment where their best player just could not stop scoring no matter what he tried. I mean, it almost felt a little symbolic where it's like, okay, Auburn did everything they could, but it was just out of reach. But it's not, Brad, because this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen in college basketball. And that's saying something.
It is. You're right. At that point, Tennessee had a couple of games lead over Auburn, and at this point still does. But I think the prevailing thought, and you can understand why, is that Tennessee was going to go lose at Alabama. Like you thought probably Alabama was going to rise to the occasion and they'd be equal to the task and they would beat Tennessee. Like Alabama got completely eviscerated at Tennessee earlier in the season.
Yeah.
And so you thought naturally, kind of like when Auburn went and lost by 4 in Tuscaloosa and then dominated Alabama at home, that it would be different on the home floor.
Right.
Especially with an opportunity to really, grab onto the SEC regular season championship lead. And that's not what happened. Tennessee went into Tuscaloosa and won, and that put in play a very interesting scenario over the final week of the regular season.
Yeah, there's a scenario now where 5 teams could hold a share of the SEC regular season title. So our friends in the next round, Taylor, shout out to Taylor, who made this graphic. Potential 5-team shared SEC title. So all that needs to happen tonight, Tuesday, March 5th, is Florida needs to win at home against Alabama, and Auburn needs to win on the road against Missouri. Which, and as we go through all of these games that need to happen a certain way, like none of them seem crazy. Now, the odds of all of these happening, I don't know. And you can make the argument that Florida winning at home against Alabama tonight is the least likely to happen.
Well, I want to play that game. I want to talk about the scenario and then get into that game a little bit. But the whole reason this is even a part of the show today, or the majority of the show today, is because they're like none of these are so far-fetched.
Right. It's not like Missouri has to beat Tennessee and Knoxville or something.
Correct.
Like it's nothing crazy like that.
Every one of these scenarios, every one of these results that you see highlighted on the screen there are feasible. They're not all of them are better than 50-50 possible, but they're all feasible without it being this, harebrained off the wall scenario. And So I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Just to run through them all, just in case somebody doesn't understand the graphic or people are listening on audio too.
Yeah.
Tonight, Tuesday, March 5th, Florida needs to beat Alabama in Gainesville, and Auburn needs to win in Columbia against Missouri. So we'll see if those two things happen. Tomorrow, Tennessee needs to lose on the road to South Carolina, and Kentucky needs to beat Vandy in Lexington.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Then Saturday, Alabama needs to beat Arkansas in Tuscaloosa. That'll happen. Mississippi State needs to beat South Carolina in Starkville. I feel pretty good about that. Kentucky winning on the road in Knoxville is tricky, but it could totally happen. The way that rivalry is, like, that's not a crazy thing to think that could happen. And then Auburn needs to beat Georgia at home. And I'm just blown away that none of these would be fluky. I mean, the whole thing would be fluky if all of these things happen. But once again, there's just not a major outlier here where it's like, there's no way this game could go that way.
All right. I think the most likely of all 8 turnouts, like the most likely, is Alabama beating Arkansas Saturday.
Not Vandy in Lexington.
Well, yeah, those are close. Like I put them, if you go a tier system rather than a ranking.
Yeah.
Auburn at Missouri tonight, Alabama at home against Arkansas Saturday, Kentucky at home against Vanderbilt Wednesday.
And I'd put Georgia at Auburn in that same tier too. Auburn's got the easiest stretch left.
You're right. Yeah, that's a good point. Auburn's 2 games are, I think, among the 4 that we feel most sure are going to happen, most likely in this scenario. Which
And I
that's a
guess
good feeling.
your second tier. See, I would put in that second tier of like probably going to happen, but like I'm not like betting on it. Would be South Carolina at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And then I would and then maybe Kentucky at Tennessee.
See, I put Florida at home over Alabama ahead of Kentucky at Tennessee. I
think tonight, Alabama losing tonight is the least likely option of these 8 games.
Oh, that's interesting.
What would you say is the least likely one?
I think Kentucky at Tennessee is the least likely.
Okay. My second least likely would be tomorrow night's game between Tennessee and South Carolina.
Yeah, and it's understandable why, because Tennessee has just had 2 outstanding showings against ranked teams in a row. So why wouldn't they do it 2 more times? I get it. The home win over Auburn and then the road win at Alabama, probably the 2 most impressive back-to-back wins that an SEC team has had this year. So they have momentum. Why wouldn't they continue to play? They're a veteran team. They shouldn't be getting worn out. I just look at that game at South Carolina, and I know what Carolina was able to do in Knoxville to get the win.
Right.
And Carolina hasn't had the fall off after the Auburn game and after their off week that we expected. Like Auburn and South Carolina were the 2 teams in the league that had their open date the latest. And they both looked sluggish in losses the day before before they had their open date. South Carolina has come back playing the same level of ball they were playing before that loss and that open date. So I think South Carolina also has a little bit of an opportunity they've got that chip on their shoulder that nobody thought we would be here. It's still us against the world. And so, yeah, I'm not the least confident in South Carolina beating Tennessee.
Yeah. So for folks asking, because this is the reasonable next question to ask, if this were to happen, what does the seeding look like? Because everybody would have the same record in conference play.
This is
delicious. So it is delicious. If this were to happen, once again, this is a major if. I mean, this is like betting on an 8-game parlay in mybookie.ag. It's like when it hits, it's great, but there's a reason 8 bets don't typically hit at the same time. But when you look at it, the seeding would be South Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn. Those would be your 4 teams with a double bye, and then Alabama would drop to the 5th spot due to that tiebreaker. So that would be wild. That would be absolutely wild if that were to happen.
Which would mean you would have, assuming Alabama would win its 5-12 matchup, since this whole show is based on assumptions, assuming they win their 5-12 matchup against like Arkansas, then you would have a Thursday afternoon, middle afternoon game between Auburn and Alabama in the 5-4 matchup.
Give it to me. That'd be insane.
Yeah.
I mean, and you talk about like great for SEC basketball. Like you're telling me the whole world wouldn't be watching that? Are you kidding me?
Huge. 2 top 25 teams. Rubber game of the series, neutral floor.
It would be huge. And it would just be it would be crazy on a Thursday. Yeah. If your employer makes you work, consider leaving and finding another job. No comment. So when you look at that, it would just be so funny to see 5 different teams hang a banner of the same thing.
Yeah, because you really so typically I'm anti-sharing titles. I got a bad taste in my mouth from 2018 when Auburn technically was, told to share with Tennessee, but the only meeting between the 2, Auburn won in Knoxville.
Right.
So that's pretty convincing. And it was a convincing win. So it's not like you split a regular season with a 5-team tie. Fine, let them all hang the banners. Sure,
whatever. Yeah,
everybody's beaten everybody in that pool at least a couple of times. So, yeah.
Not holding my breath for this, but the fact that it's somewhat possible, is crazy. And I think, I don't know, when we talk about this again, and it's still possible. Maybe we can dive into it some more, but be very interesting. So.
The first couple of legs of your parlay hit. Now you start, your ears perk up and you go, all right.
Yeah, you get a notification. It's like, do you want to cash out? And it's like, I don't think so.
No,
I think I'm going to let it ride, baby.
Yeah.
I'm going to let it ride. All right, let's talk about Auburn's portion of this more in depth in a moment, right here on Village Vice. But we already mentioned them. Today's show brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag. Look, if an 8-game parlay intimidates you, I get it. But might I interest you in a 2 or a 3-leg parlay, or even live betting in game? MyBookie.ag, they've got you covered. Hey, tonight, Auburn, an 11.5-point favorite against Missouri. On the road, I'm taking Auburn to cover, Brad.
Yeah.
I'm taking Auburn to cover. I just, the way this team is operated is either they win big or they don't. And so I don't know why that trend would stop tonight. But head over to mybookie.ag and use promo code next round to get some extra money to bet with, because we all know the sound that it makes when you make that deposit. Use promo code next round and you hear a bloop. It's crazy. Make sure your volume's turned up for sure. We're joking, but still, it's fun to joke about.
Yeah, sure.
Once again, our friends, mybookie.ag, use promo code next round. Brad, of those 8 games, I think you can make the case that Auburn's 2 games in all of that, going to Mizzou tonight and hosting Georgia on Saturday, Auburn should win both of those games and win those games convincingly. And look, the negative Auburn fan, the pessimistic Auburn fan, they'll say, this team's all over the place. I don't know how you can just expect that, which I don't think is true. I think this team has done a great job destroying teams that it's supposed to. It's the top cream of the crop where I think they've been a little inconsistent. So when you talk about taking care of business against the teams they're supposed to, with the exception of App State, they've really done that this year.
Yeah, I think so too. This narrative that Auburn is not consistent or they're a bad team on the road, they've lost games on the road to quality teams. Okay. What team in college basketball hasn't lost games on the road to quality teams? And I'm not saying they should be on the 1 line for the NCAA tournament. Like, their record and their projected seeding is about right for one of the best, 20 or so teams in the country.
Yeah.
That's where they are. That's the epitome of consistency. On the road, Auburn is 4-5 in the SEC. Is that right? I don't know. I'm looking at the CBS. Why am I looking at CBS standings? Because the other ones won't load. That wouldn't quite be right, because they have another. They wouldn't have played 9 games in the league yet.
Oh, well, the SEC one's down.
Yeah.
Why is it down?
I don't know.
This is March.
We can't. You know what? Maybe the tiebreaker scenarios just crash the SEC website.
That's it.
That's what it is. All right. In any event, they've won 4 road games this year.
They are 4-5 on the road.
All right.
But one of those would, well, no, they wouldn't be Baylor. So yeah, they're 4-5 on the road.
4-5 on the road. So that's almost 500. There's not a lot of teams that are there. There are a ton of teams in college basketball with worse records on the road than 4-5. So all of that said, like, objectively, not.
And by the way, like, almost all of the SEC falls into that category. By the way,
right. So is everybody else inconsistent, or is that just life in the league, and so it actually is consistent?
It's also like, the phrasing of this needs to be cleaned up, I think. If you are the pessimistic Auburn fan, which you can be, that's fine. I just want you to be correct when you are pessimistic, where it's like, well, whenever they leave, Neville, everything falls apart. It's like, well, they've got the second best record in the SEC when you talk about neutral site games, because people are so quick to say, well, they don't play tournament games in Neville. It's like, yeah, but they don't play them on the road either.
Yeah, they don't play them in Gainesville,
it's a neutral site thing.
And Starkville.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn's 4-1 in neutral site games, and the only team that has a better neutral site record in the conference is Mississippi State, who's 6-0. They didn't play anybody. If they would have played a Baylor in a neutral site game, they would have been 5-1, right? Yeah. So, people can think what they want. They watch this show for our opinion and for some information, and it's just, be careful. Do I think Auburn's going to go to the Final Four? No, unless something really changes with their guard play, I don't. But to say that they're not going to because they're awful away from home is not correct. And I talked about this earlier in the week, Brad, but when you look at what they've done their last 2 outings on the road, they lost to Tennessee, which stinks, but they still shot 40% from 3?
Yeah.
And if we would have all been told, hey, Auburn's going to shoot 40% from 3 on the road in Knoxville, does Auburn win? We say yes. Yes, they do. And then who did they play before that on the road? Was it Mississippi State?
It was Georgia.
No, Georgia. It was Georgia. They shot like 50-something% from 3. And so it's like the last few times that they've been out there away from home, they've actually shot the ball very, very well. They just ran into a buzzsaw that was that Connect dude who is absolutely insane. And he just couldn't miss. And he scored 25 points in 12 minutes. Like that, it stinks. That happens. But like I remember after that game, it's just like, that's really unfortunate. But like there's nothing we could have done about that. So the whole narrative, like you just got to really contort yourself and kind of twist things around to make sure your argument fits into the right space if that's the route you're going to go down.
No question. No, I said it after the Tennessee game, and there have been other outings. I mean, the first conference game of the year at Arkansas, not a win on the road, but a complete domination of a team that's far worse than we expected them to be. That's okay. I get it. But to go do what they did in Fayetteville and to win in Ole Miss, and I know other teams have won in Ole Miss, and I hate that we have to have all these qualifiers for wins that just frankly, if the narrative is they're bad on the road, then all we have to say is, no, Fayetteville, Oxford, Athens.
And with all the qualifiers, it's like, okay, so with college basketball, do just 2 games matter every season? Is that it?
We don't want to get into that world. We do not want to get into that world where we take.
That's a dangerous place to be, man. Right. That's a dangerous place to be. And we're kind of close to that with college football right now. It's like you want as many games as possible to matter. And they do. That's why there's a chance for a 5-game split of the title that we just talked about. Like all 8 of those games matter. Absolutely. They all impact the regular season champion. And I think that's important.
I want to say something about Auburn's potential down the stretch.
Okay.
If a trend continues, this team can be extremely dangerous on a neutral floor against anybody. And I'll give Justin Ferguson credit for this. 2 days ago,
the best.
Justin tweeted this: over the last 5 games, Auburn is shooting 44% from 3-point range as a team. Not 1 game, not 2 games, over the last 5 games. And that leads all Division I basketball.
They're shooting really well right now, Brad. They are shooting really, really well.
Absolutely. And Denver Jones is a big part of that. And if Denver can become maybe, if not the focus, because I mean, with Janai and Jalen, you're not going to make a guard the focus. But if he can become, if he's going to get double-digit shots a game and shoot at that clip, I mean, Auburn's going to be in it right down to the end against anybody on a neutral floor.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of interesting about this Auburn team is they're shooting super well from deep right now. And it's not really their point guards doing it, which is what we've traditionally seen when Bruce Pearl teams get hot, is their point guard just catches fire. And you're seeing Denver score more, which is huge. They've needed that all year. I'm glad that he's peaking now and not a month ago. But you're seeing the production from deep from Chad Baker-Mazara, a forward, who's a wing, but a forward.
Yeah.
Jalen, Janai is making more threes. I still don't love that he's shooting those, but if they keep making them, I'm totally okay with it. Yeah. But it's a different type of makeup than what we would normally see. And so March is all about guard play, but they say that because of turnovers or lack thereof. You need lack of turnovers. You need to take care of the basketball, and you need to shoot well from 3. It's like, well, Auburn's doing that. So it's just they're doing it in a different way. I'm curious to see how that translates in March.
I am too. Trey Donaldson had 6 assists, no turnovers against Mississippi State. He had 3 and 1 against Tennessee. So last week, 2 games, 9 assists, 1 turnover. That's great. From your point guard that's coming off the bench, if that's the only stat you hear, you go, wow, that's phenomenal production. Even if he's not scoring, because we talked about this on yesterday's show. If your point guard isn't scoring, then he needs to be facilitating. On the other side of that, Aiden Holloway, following a 15-point, 3-assist game at Georgia, 2 assists, 1 turnover against Tennessee, 1 assist, 1 turnover against Mississippi State. And Aiden would tell you that you got to, like, if that's your assist line, then you need to be scoring about 12. And he didn't score against Mississippi State, had 5 against Tennessee. So,
well, and he's not really shooting it that much. Like, he went off against Georgia, and we're like, okay, he's back. This is great. This is great news. And then he hasn't really shot the ball since then.
Yeah, he's 2 for 6 total since then.
Gotcha.
So,
gotcha.
And only took 1 shot against Mississippi State.
Right.
Now, did State defensively just, did they lock him down and didn't allow him to get off a shot? Were other things open? There are variables to that conversation, but you do part of the expectation for the point guard is to create. You create either for yourself or for others.
So speaking of creating for yourself or for others, Brad.
Wait until you get a load of this. It's our friends at manscaped.com, 20% off, free shipping, promo code VICE at manscaped.com. March is typically, Zach, that time of year where you start talking about spring cleaning. Spring cleaning. I can tell you have an idea where this is going already. This episode brought to you by the spring cleaning champions at Manscaped. This season, make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. You got to clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and just watch your confidence bloom like those springtime flowers. Wow. Embrace the season. Embrace it. And join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this special offer. Go to manscaped.com, use promo code VICE to get 20% off and free shipping. Groom the carpets and the drapes. You like that?
I'm just glad you didn't say little leprechaun again. I wasn't really ready for that one. I like that one better.
It's coming again. It's coming around again.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. Any concerns in your mind that Auburn does not win out?
Barring injury, I think it's not beyond what we just talked about. I don't know that Missouri or Georgia can defend the perimeter with the length and the consistency that a Tennessee could do it. Kentucky could do it.
Yeah, I don't think they can defend the rim. I mean, I think Janai could have 25 in both of these games if he really wanted to.
Well, right. And so the only concern would be, can the guards get Auburn into the offense to feed the guys underneath? And
which I think they will.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. The teams that have had success against Auburn have done it basically by picking up the point guard at three-quarter court and not letting Auburn get into their offense until about 12 seconds are left on the shot clock.
Right.
That's what makes it difficult for Auburn. And again, this isn't trash talk. This is just kind of objectively. Missouri hasn't won a game in the league. Yep. Auburn handled Georgia fine in Athens, and now you get them at home in the last regular season game of the year. Objectively,
senior day, like that should be a pretty cool. That should be a pretty cool day.
All of those things, no question.
Stuff matters.
And just objectively, no, I don't think either of those teams would be able to consistently stop Auburn from doing what it wants to do.
Yeah.
So should be. I'll tell you this. I love as a basketball kind of guy. I love going into this week with all of these games mattering.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
To have those 8 games just in our league means something.
It just means more.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It just means more, baby.
And it means more this week. More.
That's right. Hey, can I wish somebody a happy birthday real quick? Do you mind?
Well, I don't mind at all. No, why would I mind somebody spreading joy?
It's new Auburn linebacker Dorian Mausi's birthday.
Huh.
And I just think he's a transfer portal guy that hasn't been talked about enough because I think he's going to be in the rotation. So happy birthday, Dorian Mausi.
I think he will be as well. No question. So yes, happy birthday, DM Dorian.
Is that what you call him? You call him DM?
I don't think so. I tried it out then. I just took it on a test flight. I didn't like it.
I hated it.
Yeah. I didn't like it at all. So we're just gonna leave that one. We're gonna leave that one right outside. I'm gonna leave it on the curb. I'm gonna go Facebook Marketplace. This is on the curb. You come pick it up if you want it. I don't want it anymore.
Yep. So. If not, the trash guy will come get it. That's right. That's right. Brad, I think that about does it for today's show.
It does. Thanks everybody for watching episode 101 of Village Vice. Remember, everybody has vices. Make sure Village Vice is one of yours.